By the Emperor's will and the weight of every war that was never won, stand to, soldier. This is Throne of War. Tonight we are boots deep in the rot-soaked jungles of Malgrath's Reach, a death world the Departamento Munitorum classified as Hazard Level 2. Low priority, manageable with acceptable losses, the kind of language written by men who have never set foot outside a command ship and would not recognize acceptable losses if it handed them a casualty report with their own name on it. Our narrator is Sergeant Davin Kyle, 74th Varati Recon, Astra Militarum Scout, moving alone through 3 kilometers of living hostility with a Voxcaster that has been receiving transmissions it should not be receiving from a man who has been dead for 11 months. His mission is simple on paper. Locate forward listening post Veric 9. Re-establish contact. Report back. The post went silent 6 days ago. 4 men, standard garrison, routine signals duty. 6 days of nothing. The simple explanation is equipment failure, predator activity, a power cell that gave out in the rain. The Munitorum loves simple explanations. They fit neatly into reports. But on day 7 of the silence, before Kale was even deployed, our regiment's Vox array received a transmission on Veric 9's exact encrypted frequency. Imperial Gothic, perfectly spoken. Standard resupply request. Requesting grid coordinates confirmed. Supplies acknowledged. All clear at post. The voice belonged to Sergeant First Class Orin Pyrev of the 74th Varati. Sergeant Pyrev was killed in action on Harath 4 11 months ago. Kyle filed that report himself. So check your seals, soldier. Charge your lasgun. Say your prayers if you still believe in them. Something on Malgrath's Reach has learned to speak in dead men's voices, and it has been practicing. Let's begin. Chapter 2, in media res. I am moving on my hands and knees. Not because I am injured, not yet, but because anything that moves upright through the canopy floor of Malgrath's Reach is a target. The undergrowth here runs chest high in most places, dense enough to hide a full squad in 3 meters of lateral distance, tangled enough that moving through it at standing height sounds like a man falling down a staircase, slowly, repeatedly. I have been crawling since dawn. The mud is the consistency of cold recaf dregs and smells considerably worse. Something in the soil chemistry here, the Munitorum primer, was gracious enough to note this in a footnote, page 47. Reacts with organic decomposition to produce a faint sulfurous undertone that never fully leaves your nose. After 2 days, you stop noticing it. After 3 days, you start to miss clean air the way you miss people. Specifically, with real grief, it is day 2 for me on Malgrath's Reach. I am already grieving. Quick kit check, because on a death world, you check your kit the way a sane person checks their heartbeat. Regularly and with significant anxiety. Lasgun charge, 61%. Down from 73 at dawn. I have fired exactly 4 shots since yesterday. 2 at a territorial ground crawler that got curious about my left boot. 2 at a vine I misidentified as a ground crawler in the dark before I identified it as a vine. 4 shots should not account for 12% charge drain. Something in this jungle pulls at power cells. The primer does not mention this. The primer, I am increasingly convinced, was written about a completely different planet. Voxcaster. Functional. Receiving intermittent static on a frequency I have been ordered not to transmit on until I reach the post, and can confirm visual. Veric 9's frequency. The static comes in 3-second bursts, irregular spacing, no discernible pattern. Could be atmospheric interference, could be equipment degrading at the post, could be something I am choosing not to think about until I have no other choice. Water. Adequate. Treated, boiled, filtered, treated again, still tasting faintly of purifier chemicals, and a philosophical resignation to discomfort. Trooper Ven. Missing since yesterday morning. That last one sits differently than the others. Ven was my scout partner on this deployment, 8 years in the 74th, 3 death worlds, the kind of quiet competence that makes you forget to be afraid because he never seemed to be. We were moving parallel lines, 20 meters apart, standard recon spacing. I heard him step over a root. I heard him land on the other side of it. I did not hear anything after that. No shot, no struggle, no sound at all. I crossed to his line in 30 seconds. There was a boot print in the mud, mid-stride, boot down pressure indicating normal walking speed, and then nothing. No second print, no disturbance in the undergrowth, no blood, just Ven, mid-step, and then the jungle having decided he was done. I spent 40 minutes searching. I found nothing. On a death world, nothing is often the worst possible finding. I am moving alone now. The jungle does not care about this. The jungle does not care about anything, which is, philosophically, the most terrifying thing about it. Chapter 3. The Threat Gauntlet. 40 minutes after dawn, I pick up the first sign that I am not the apex predator in this section of canopy. It starts as a sound, or rather, the absence of one specific sound. The canopy of Malgrath's reach is never fully quiet. There is always something making noise up in the upper layers, rustling. Small creatures crossing branches, the wet percussion of moisture dripping from leaf to leaf in chains. It is the sound of a living system running at full capacity. But there is one layer of that sound I have been tracking since yesterday, without consciously naming it. A soft, periodic displacement. Branches 20 meters up, settling and resettling in a rhythm that does not match the wind, because there is no wind down here. The canopy eats wind at about 60 meters up. Down here, the air is as still as a held breath. The rhythm up there is not wind, it is weight. Something is moving through the upper branches, tracking my position from directly above. I stop. The rhythm stops. I move. The rhythm resumes. I slow down. The rhythm slows. I learn something in that moment that I'll remember for the rest of my life, however long that turns out to be. Whatever is up there is not simply moving through the canopy on its own path that happens to cross mine. It is matching my pace deliberately. It knows I am below it. It is not attacking because it is not ready to attack. It is waiting. I know this because of Trooper Hansek. Hansek was 4 deployments ago, Veredis Secundus, a different kind of death world, wetter, if that is imaginable, with arboreal pack hunters the local garrison called roof stalkers. 6-limbed, low profile, prehensile enough to move through canopy without disturbing a single branch more than necessary. Completely silent when hunting. Completely patient. Hansek was curious. He was often curious. It was, in the end, the quality that made him excellent at his job and fatal at his survival. He looked up once, just once, tilting his head to try and count how many were tracking him from above. Whatever he saw, it occupied his attention for the fraction of a second it took for one of them to drop 40 meters straight onto his shoulders. We found his boots. The laces were still tied. Hansek was always meticulous about his laces. I do not look up. I identify the densest section of upper canopy on my map overlay. A ridge ahead, where 3 mature anchor trees have interlocked their upper branches, into a ceiling too thick for anything heavier than a small bird to descend through. I adjust my course 17 degrees. I move at exactly the same pace as before. No urgency, no change in sound profile. The rhythm above me follows for 200 meters. Then it stops at the edge of the dense section. I hear it up there, waiting, testing the canopy ceiling, finding it impassable. I do not speed up on the other side. Speeding up signals fear. Fear on a death world is information you do not give away for free. I simply continue. I add the roof stalker entry to my mental corrections to the Militarum primer. Page 22, fauna section, arboreal predators. The primer says they hunt by scent. This is incorrect. They hunt by sound and vibration. A man who holds his breath while they pass overhead will not survive. A man who regulates his movement and removes himself from their descent corridor will. The primer was written by someone who survived by luck and called it observation. The worst kind of expert. An hour later, I find the Bloomfield. I smell it before I see it. A sweetness in the air, faint and layered, like ripe fruit over something pharmaceutical underneath. Warm and almost pleasant. The kind of smell that, if you encountered it in a hab block, you would follow to its source without hesitation. Out here, I stop dead and breathe through my teeth. The clearing opens up ahead, maybe 30 meters across. The canopy parting here to allow weak grey light down to the jungle floor. The floor itself is carpeted in pale blue flowers, small, bell-shaped, nodding gently in the microscopic air currents that their own respiration creates. They are extraordinarily beautiful. The kind of beautiful that a man who had never been on a death world would photograph and send home. Corman Delver walked through a field like this on the second day of the Ferreth 4 deployment. She had been on 2 prior campaigns, a solid medic, steady hands, the kind of dark humor that keeps a squad functional under pressure. She said it smelled like home. She said that clearly, with a small smile that none of us had seen on her before. Then she said it again, the exact same sentence, in the exact same tone. And that was when Sergeant Bren started moving toward her. By the time we reached her, the roots had already started working through the joints in her boots. The flower's root system is shallow but fast. Pressure triggered, drawn to body heat and carbon output. Opportunistic in the way that only things which have never needed to hurry tend to be. She was delirious from whatever the pollen carries. She was humming something none of us recognized. She was very nearly peaceful. We performed the Emperor's Mercy. Bren did it himself. It was the kindest thing left to do. I map a full perimeter around the Bloomfield, 40 meters clearance, adding 37 minutes to my approach. 37 minutes is nothing. 37 minutes is alive. I note, as I complete the detour, that the Militarum primer contains no entry for Bloomfields on Malgrath's reach. Men will walk into them for the next 100 years because no one who survives them ever writes the report that matters. Survival doesn't generate paperwork, death does, and the dead are notoriously poor documentarians. It is while I am completing the detour that my Voxcaster activates. I have not touched it. My hands are occupied keeping my weight off the ground on a raised root section. The activation is automatic, an incoming transmission, breaching the monitoring frequency I have been passively watching since deployment. Static, 3 seconds. Then a voice, male, calm. Clear Imperial Gothic, no atmospheric distortion. Better signal quality than my own unit is currently capable of producing. Verac 9 to regiment, all clear at post. requesting resupply on grid 7. Estimate 4 days to critical supply threshold. Repeat, all clear. I know that voice. I have known that voice for 6 years. I know the particular cadence of it, the slight forward emphasis on odd syllables, the way it clips the end of threshold, as if the word is longer than it needs to be. I know it the way you know a sound that has preceded safety so many times that your nervous system has filed it under good. It is Sergeant Oren Pirev. It is exactly Pirev, not an approximation, not a recording degraded by distance or time. It is him, present tense, clear as a command deck transmission. I remain completely still for 11 seconds. I count them. A skill I developed 4 deployments ago for reasons I will explain shortly. I do not respond. I was taught, by a man who did not survive the deployment on which he taught me, that you never respond to something you do not understand, not because responding is always wrong, but because on a death world, anything that is communicating with you without your prior knowledge has already decided what to do with your response before you give it. The transmission cuts. Static. Silence. I checked the directional indicator on my Vox. The transmission originated from the northeast, from the direction of Varric 9. I mark the grid. I adjust my approach angle by 30 degrees, choosing a longer indirect route with better cover. I begin to move again, slower than before. The half-silence that has been following me since dawn, the slightly too quiet quality that I have been registering without naming, has shifted. It is no longer half-silence. The jungle around me has gone completely quiet. That is your only warning. I have said it before, and I will keep saying it until every soldier who serves under this sky knows it in their sleep. The jungle has a language, and its most important word is silence, not the absence of all sound. That is rarer and worse than this, but the specific, targeted withdrawal of the ambient chorus. The insects, the canopy creatures, the ground dwellers, all of them making a collective decision, simultaneously, to become invisible. It means something bigger than all of them has entered the space. I have 11 seconds. I know this because of a man named Sergeant Tolas on the Varadis deployment, the same one where I lost Hansek. Tolas was old for a recon scout, 38, which in this profession is practically ancestral. He had a habit I thought was eccentric until the day it saved my life. Whenever the jungle went quiet, he would count under his breath, 1 to 11. Then he would move because by 11 seconds, whatever had caused the silence had identified his position from the stillness he was creating by waiting. 11 seconds is the window between the silence and the strike. I am at 7 when I start moving. Chapter 4. Character Excavation. I find a defensible hollow beneath a collapsed anchor tree 2 hours later. The root mass has created a natural overhang. Good sight lines to the north and east, elevated enough to give me half a meter of advantage over anything approaching at ground level. I take 12 minutes, not because I am safe. Nothing on Malgrath's reach is safe, but because a soldier who does not rest is a soldier who starts making the kind of decisions that make their name appear in another man's casualty report. I eat half a ration bar. It has the texture of compressed boot leather and the flavor of machine oil with ambitions. The Militarum calls it Nutrient Supplement Brick, Pattern 7. The 74th calls it Corpse Starch. There is a standing rumor about the protein content that I have never investigated because some information is genuinely not useful to have. I eat the other half anyway. Calories are calories. While I eat, I think about Pirev. Not the voice on the Vox, not yet. The actual man. Orin Pirev, as he existed before Harath IV, before the mine detonation that was clean and fast and left nothing ambiguous for anyone present. I think about the man I served alongside for 6 years across 4 campaigns. Pirev had a specific quality that I have encountered in very few soldiers across 11 deployments. He remembered names, not just the names of his own squad, not just the officers, everyone. Every trooper he had ever been in a briefing room with. Every medic who had treated anyone near him. Every supply officer who had handed him equipment. He remembered them all, first name and surname. And when he met them again, a year later, a different planet, completely different context, he addressed them by name before they had time to place him. It sounds like a small thing. On a death world, it is not a small thing. On a death world, being remembered by name is proof that your survival has been noticed, that someone has filed you under still here and considers that worth tracking. He kept a list. Small notebook, breast pocket, written in handwriting so compressed it required squinting to read. Every name. Not organized by unit or date or campaign, just names, in the order he had learned them. When someone died, he did not cross the name out. He drew a small aquila next to it instead. By the end of his 3rd deployment, the list was mostly aquilas. I confirmed his death on Harath IV personally. I was close enough to see it happen. There was no ambiguity, no missing in action classification, no window for error. I filed the report. I drew the aquila next to his name in my own version of his list, a habit I picked up from him without meaning to. Whatever is transmitting on Veric 9's frequency is using Pirev's voice with complete accuracy. Every cadence, every habitual emphasis. It is not a distortion of him. It is a perfect production of him. I do not know what is capable of that on Malgrath's reach. I do not know what could learn a voice well enough to reproduce it at this fidelity. I know that the Minotaurum's assessment of this world as hazard level 2 is wrong in at least 3 ways I have personally documented in the past 2 days, and I am beginning to suspect the fidelity of the voice is evidence of a 4th way that no one in the assessment team had the misfortune to survive discovering. I closed my eyes for 4 minutes. Not sleep. Soldiers in recon learn to distinguish between sleep and the 4-minute neural reset that passes for it in the field. 4 minutes of reduced cortisol, slowed breathing, deliberate emptying of everything that is not immediately relevant. What remains when I open my eyes? Ven is gone. Pirev is dead. Something is using his voice from the direction of Veric 9. The jungle is quiet in ways it should not be. I have 41% lasgun charge, 1 combat knife, 4 grenades, half a medikit, and the particular variety of stubbornness that 11 deployments have calcified into something that functions like courage on days when I am not examining it too closely. The Imperium sends us to places it has already decided we won't come back from. The trick is deciding the Imperium is wrong. Pirev understood that. He wrote it in the margins of the primer once, next to the page about acceptable losses, in that compressed handwriting of his. Whatever is out there using his voice is counting on me not understanding it. I stand up. I check my seals. I move toward Veric 9. Chapter 5. Combat Spike 1. 600 meters from the post grid coordinates, I find what is left of Trooper Ven. Not all of him, but enough. His recon tags are still attached to a piece of shoulder armor, wedged into the root structure of a massive anchor tree. The tree itself is old enough that its root buttresses have grown taller than I am, creating a series of natural alcoves at ground level. The armor piece was placed there, not dropped, not dragged, placed with deliberate positioning, facing the approach path I am on, facing me. I crouch beside it for a long time. I look at the damage. The cuts are wrong. I have seen what Deathworld predators do to armor. I have seen quill spine impacts, acid dissolution, crushing compression damage, tearing consistent with multiple types of jaw configuration. I have seen tyrannid bioweapons at work on ceramite, which is a different category of wrong entirely. I have a functional working knowledge of what violence looks like when an animal does it. This is not animal violence. The cuts in Ven's armor are parallel, evenly spaced, consistent depth, consistent angle, consistent separation. They were made by something with multiple cutting surfaces operating in coordinated sequence. But more than the geometry, more than the precision, what stops me is the placement. The cuts are on the inside of the shoulder plate, not on the outside where an attacking creature would strike. On the inside where the armor meets the body. Something removed his armor before it cut him, or cut him through it in a way that required understanding where the body was beneath the surface. Either option requires a level of anatomical knowledge that nothing in the Munitorum bestiary for Malgrath's reach should possess. I am still looking at this when the undergrowth to my left moves. Not the broad, crashing movement of a large predator. Not the quick, nervous movement of something startled. Controlled movement, measured. The kind that creates exactly as much disturbance as is necessary and no more. I raise my laser gun and fire at the movement. A single aimed burst, standard contact protocol. The last bolt punches into the undergrowth and I hear it connect with something. A resistance, a brief flash of something solid in the foliage. No sound of injury, no retreat. The undergrowth settles. 30 seconds of silence, complete, total, the entire jungle holding its breath. Then my Voxcaster activates. Pirev's voice. Directly in my ear, from the helmet combead, intimate and clear and absolutely wrong. Grid confirmed, resupply acknowledged. Welcome to Verac 9, Sergeant Kale. It knows my name. I have not transmitted once since deployment. I have not spoken above a whisper. My identification is in my recon tags, sealed under my armor, not externally readable by any standard scanning method. It knows my name. I have approximately the time it takes to process this thought before something drops from directly above, fast, heavy, entirely silent, and my laser gun is ripped sideways as I am driven flat into the mud. Weight on my chest, weight on my arms, something massive and present that I cannot properly see because it seems to exist in the light differently than the things around it. Not invisible, but occupying visual space with the wrong kind of certainty. The edges of it do not read correctly. My eyes keep sliding off them. Pinned. Laser gun 2 meters away to my right. Combat knife on my left hip. Left hand immobilized under something I cannot shift. There is a moment in every bad situation. Every soldier who has been in enough of them knows this moment, where the body offers you 2 options: shutdown or acceleration. The nervous system presents the weight of what is happening and asks what you intend to do about it. 11 deployments, 43 confirmed Deathworld contact events, 17 documented close calls requiring medical intervention afterward. The part of me that has survived all of that makes a decision without asking the rest of me for input. I am not done yet. I stop trying to free my left hand. Instead, I stop resisting the weight entirely. A full half second of complete relaxation, every muscle releasing simultaneously. The thing on top of me adjusts its weight forward in response to the change in resistance, shifting its center of gravity toward my upper body. My left hand comes free. I do not reach for the knife. I reach for the laser gun in my right hand. Too far. I know it's too far. I am not reaching for the laser gun. I am reaching for the grip of it, and I am using the reach as a rotation, rolling my entire body along the axis of the reach, and the laser gun comes up not in my hand but beside my hand. Muzzle contact range, pressed against the surface of the thing that is holding me down. I fire, point blank. The muzzle flash at that range is significant. The thing recoils, not from the impact, from the light. The thing is still out there, 20 meters, based on the last movement I heard, not gone. Waiting. I pick up my laser gun. I check the charge twice, which is the kind of redundancy that only makes sense when 31% feels like the most important number in the galaxy. I move toward Verac 9, because the mission is still the mission, and because whatever this thing is, it has chosen to follow rather than press its advantage. And that means there is information it wants from me being alive that it cannot get from me dead. I intend to make that calculation cost it considerably. Chapter 6. False campfire and rehook. The post is 400 meters further. I need to treat my arms before I reach it. Open wounds and jungle contact are a timeline I cannot afford to ignore. I find a root overhang, not ideal, but elevated and with sight lines, and I take 8 minutes. The medikit yields antiseptic foam, bandaging material, and a thermal pack for the ribs that will do nothing for the structural damage and everything for the pain management. I apply the foam to both forearms. It hisses on contact, which means it is working, and also that I have introduced a new sound to my immediate environment that I would prefer not to have introduced, but the alternative is a jungle infection that will be doing the enemy's work for it within 48 hours. While I am working on the second arm, I become aware that I am not alone in my kit pouch. I open the secondary compartment to retrieve the bandaging roll and find, nested inside it with an expression of complete composure, a small creature approximately the size of my thumb. Rounded, dark-furred, enormous eyes, reflecting the ambient light with the mild interest of something that has decided I am not an immediate threat. It has apparently been living in my medikit pouch since approximately the start of the deployment, drawn, I assume, by the thermal pack's warmth. It looks at me. I look at it. After what has happened in the past 6 hours, I find I have very little interest in being cruel to anything that is simply trying to stay warm in a cold and hostile place. I lift it out carefully and set it on the root beside me. It sits there for a moment, apparently considering its options, and then moves with unhurried dignity into the undergrowth. I replace the bandaging roll. I finish the dressing. I eat nothing. No smell, no sound, no resources to spare. In the inner pocket of Ven's recovered armor piece, which I have been carrying since I found it, there is a datapad, cracked screen, mud sealed around the charging port, but functional when I press the activation point, already open to the last accessed file. It is Verac 9's operational log, filed by Trooper Asher, Signal Specialist, the youngest member of the listening post garrison. I read the final entries. Day 30. Started receiving echo transmissions on our own frequency. Copies of messages we sent on days 27 and 28, playing back with perfect fidelity. Sergeant Dinav says its signal bounced off the atmosphere layer. Possible. The atmospheric readings here have been irregular. Day 32, the echo transmissions are responding. not playing back our messages anymore, responding to them. We transmitted a supply request on day 31. On day 32, we received a confirmation in Sergeant Denav's voice that none of us sent. Sergeant Denav has not sent any transmissions since day 28. We checked his unit. It has not transmitted. Day 33. It used Sergeant Pirev's frequency, asked for our exact grid coordinates using Pirev's authentication code. We did not respond. I don't know how it has Pirev's code. His authentication was retired after Harath IV. It should not exist in any active system. Day 34. We think it already knew the grid before it asked. I think it has been listening since we arrived. I think it learned our voices and our codes and our names before it decided to do anything about us. I think asking for the grid was not information gathering. I think it was introduction. It wanted us to know it had been listening. Day 35. The entry ends there. I put the datapad in my breast pocket. I already know what happened on day 35. I am looking at a jungle that is very specifically quiet in the direction of Varrock 9, and I know what that quiet means now in a way I did not know at the start of this deployment. I close the medikit. I stand up. I will sleep when I am dead. On Malgrath's Reach, that is less of an expression and more of a scheduling note. I move. Chapter 7. Approach and dread build. 200 meters from the post coordinates the air changes. Not the rot and copper of the jungle floor. Not the Bloomfield's chemical sweetness. Something dry, metallic, faintly electrical. The specific ozone smell of a Vox array that has been running a continuous broadcast for an extended period. The smell of something that has been transmitting for days without pause. The jungle is silent. Completely, comprehensively silent. Not the targeted silence of a single predator. The total silence of an entire ecosystem that has decided there is something present that it does not want to attract the attention of. I move through the last 200 meters in complete stillness, 1 foot at a time, weight distributed across the full sole before transfer. The camo hood dimming my heat signature as much as a piece of equipment, rated for standard jungle combat, can dim it on a world this sophisticated. Not enough. I know it is not enough. I move as if it is. Varrock 9 comes into view through the canopy fringe. It is intact. That is the first wrong thing. I was prepared for destruction, blast damage, structural collapse, the aftermath of a predator incursion. What I am looking at is a functioning forward listening post. The Vox array is raised and active. The power cells are running. The Auspex tower is rotating on its standard cycle. The hab shelter is sealed. No external damage. The Aquila marker above the door still straight and unblemished. Everything is on. Everything is running. Through the viewport of the hab shelter, I can see the garrison. All 4 of them, seated at their stations. Correct positions, correct posture. Trooper Asher at the Vox console. Trooper Mayer at the Auspex station. Corpsman Varel at the medical alcove. Sergeant Denav at the command desk. All 4 present and correctly positioned, doing their jobs. I watch for 40 seconds before I understand. None of them have moved. Not the small adjustments of a person at work. The shift of weight, the turn of the head, the reach for an instrument. They are seated with the stillness of people who have been positioned rather than people who are sitting. And the Vox array is broadcasting, and the power cells are running, and no one in that room has touched anything in a very long time. I move around to the entry. I check the door seal. Intact, no forced entry. The lock mechanism undamaged. I open it. The smell tells me before anything else confirms it. clean, cold, the specific absence of the biological processes that make enclosed spaces smell like the people in them. They have been here for days. Whatever kept the equipment running has not extended to the people who are supposed to operate it. I step inside. I look at them each in turn. I close each pair of eyes in turn. Emperor received them. Emperor received them all. The Vox array is broadcasting on 17 frequencies simultaneously. I can see it on the console display. 17 active channels. All of them Imperial Guard recon frequencies. All of them broadcasting Verac 9's authentication. All of them transmitting. I pull up the signal log. The first transmission on a second frequency went out on day 31. By day 34, it was broadcasting on 6. By the time the garrison went silent, it was on 11. Since then, 6 days of silence from this post, it has expanded to 17. 17 active recon frequencies across Malgrath's reach, all of them receiving transmissions from Verac 9, all of them presumably with scouts moving toward them now, called in by dead men's voices, moving through a jungle that has been learning them since they arrived. Something has been using this post as a school, and I have just become its most recent curriculum. Chapter 8, Climax. I do not run. I want to be clear about this, soldier, because I want you to understand the reasoning rather than assuming it is courage. It is not courage. Running on a death world from something faster than you, that knows your name, that has been studying your movement patterns since before you landed, is a method of dying that simply takes longer than the alternative. Running is giving it time and distance in which to apply everything it has learned about you. I am not giving it anything for free. I transmit on the open frequency, Verac 9's primary, the one it has been using. I speak clearly and without urgency, because urgency is also information. I know you are listening. I know you learned them before you took them. I know you have been listening to me since I left the drop point. I want you to know something in return. I have been on 11 death worlds. I have been studied before, on 4 of them. The things that studied me are still out there somewhere, in pieces. Some of them are in several different places at once, which I'm told is unusual for the species. Static, 3 seconds. Then a voice from my own helmet comm-bead, from the internal channel, the sealed channel that requires my authentication code to access, a channel that I have never broadcast on during this deployment. My own voice, slightly wrong in its cadence, slightly forward in its emphasis, a precise and imperfect reproduction of me. 11 deployments. Malgrath's reach is the 12th. You checked your laser gun charge at the briefing before it finished. You released the creature from your medikit. You ate both halves of the ration bar. You counted 11 seconds before you moved. It has been watching me since before I landed, since the briefing, since I was simply a set of observable behaviors and a voice on a regimental frequency and a name on an assignment roster. It knows 11 seconds. It knows I count. I know it recoils from last frequency light. We know each other. Good. The Vox array behind me is a Master Vox unit, the command level installation, capable of broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously, capable of generating a sustained signal pulse across the full Vox spectrum. It was designed to coordinate multiple units across a combat theater. It was not designed for what I'm about to use it for, but the engineering principles are compatible. I move to the console. I access the broadcast settings. I set the array to emit a sustained pulse on the visible spectrum crossover band. the frequency range where Vox transmission wavelengths overlap with low-intensity LAS light emission. A sustained, directional, room-filling output of exactly the frequency that made it flinch. Then I transmit on the open channel again. I am going to activate the array now. I thought you should know. It seems only fair. You introduced yourself. This is me returning the courtesy. I activate the array. What happens next happens very fast. The room fills with a low, sustained hum. The array running at full output. The ozone smell intensifying immediately. The air taking on a faint luminescence at the edges of the visible spectrum. And the thing comes through the doorway. Fully visible. For the first time, fully visible. It is large. It is not any shape I have a word for. The adaptive surface that makes its edges wrong in peripheral vision is failing under the sustained light, flickering between its camouflage state and something underneath that does not resolve into a recognizable form, because the recognizable forms I carry in my mind were not built to accommodate it. Multiple limbs, yes. A central mass, yes. Something that functions as a sensory apparatus at the forward end. Currently oriented away from the light source with the full commitment of something experiencing genuine distress. It is between me and the door, and I have 31% laser gun charge. I fire, not aimed, sustained. Full output, moving the muzzle in a slow arc to maintain light contact across as wide a surface area as possible, using the charge not as ammunition, but as a light source, keeping it exposed, keeping the array light and the last light overlapping to deny it any shadow to step into. 20%. It is moving along the wall, searching for an angle the light cannot reach. 15%. I follow it with the muzzle. My broken ribs are a problem I am filing for later. 10%. It finds a corner. The array's output does not reach into corners uniformly. It gathers itself in the shadow. 5%. I pull a grenade from my belt. Standard frag, Munitorum pattern, reliable in my experience for approximately the one function it was designed for. I look at the corner. I look at the array console. I throw the grenade at the array. Not at the thing. At the array. The explosion is significantly larger than a standard frag detonation, because I have just added the full output capacity of a Master Vox power cell to it. The room is, briefly, entirely light. Every shadow in it erased simultaneously for 3 full seconds, the kind of illumination that has no edges and no corners and no places to be other than fully in. 3 seconds, then darkness, then the emergency lumens activating at quarter power, then the smell of burned circuitry and ozone and something else, something that is not any material I recognize burning, sweet and sharp at the same time. The corner is empty, not fled, empty. The way a space is empty when whatever occupied it is no longer occupying anything. Present, and then not present, with nothing in between. I stand in the middle of the ruined post for a long time. My laser gun reads 0%. The array is destroyed. 4 guardsmen are still at their stations. My right eye is flash blind from the explosion, and will be for several hours, which is a manageable problem, as long as I have depth perception in the other one, which I do. I breathe, carefully, given the ribs. The room is quiet. Chapter 9. Resolution and Widening Threat. I spend time with each of them before I do anything else. Trooper Asher, the one who kept the log. She's young. Younger than I expected from the voice in the entries, which was precise and professional, and older sounding than the face it belonged to. I close her eyes. I take her tags. I find her notebook. Not a log, a personal notebook, small and worn at the corners, and put it in my breast pocket without reading it. Some things are for family, not reports. Trooper Mayor, Corpsman Varel, Sergeant Denav. Tags, closed eyes. The Emperor's prayer spoken quietly into a room that has stopped listening to anything human. In Denav's desk, I find the frequency roster, the 17 frequencies the array was broadcasting on. I cross-reference them against the deployment map on my wrist unit. 17 listening posts, 17 recon teams currently active, currently moving through the jungle on Malgrath's reach. All of them, I now understand, moving toward posts that have been broadcasting in the voices of the dead. 17 teams, called in the same way I was called in, by the same thing, or things like it, or the same thing with 17 other faces it has been preparing. I am the only one who knows. I moved to the secondary Vox unit, the backup, a smaller portable model stored in the equipment locker, undamaged, running on its own power cell. I key my authentication code. I transmit. Veric 9 to Regiment. Post located. Garrison confirmed KYA, 4 souls. Emperor received them. Primary threat neutralized. 1 primary threat. Transmitting emergency blackout request. All 17 active recon frequencies on Malgrath's reach, effective immediately. Do not respond on any of those frequencies. Do not respond until you receive my personal authentication on this secondary band. Authorization code KL77. I will explain when I'm back aboard. Do not respond on any frequency until I reach extraction. I pause. If any recon teams are currently monitoring this transmission, do not transmit back. Do not use your Vox. Navigation only. Return to extraction points using dead reckoning. If your Vox has activated without your input in the last 72 hours, if you have received transmissions in the voices of people you know are dead, do not respond and do not stop moving. Kyle out. I secure the portable Vox to my belt. I gather what is salvageable from the post. Asher's frequency log, Denav's roster, the tags. I take Ven's armor piece from where I set it by the door. I step outside. The jungle is still quiet. It has been quiet since I arrived and it remains quiet. This should feel like relief. It does not feel like relief. On the path back, 100 meters from the post, following the route I mapped on the approach, I pass the spot where the thing died, where it stopped being present. There is nothing there, no residue, no physical evidence, no mark on the ground. The undergrowth is undisturbed. If I had not been there, I would not know that anything had happened in this spot. I check my wrist-mounted secondary Vox, the personal unit, the one that runs separately from my main caster, the one I carry for emergency authentication only. The frequency it monitors is my personal identification band, a frequency I have never broadcast on, a frequency that exists only in regimental command records, assigned to me when I was first inducted into the 74th. It is receiving a transmission, faint, intermittent, but clear. My own voice, my own cadence, correctly emphasized. The slight forward stress I put on odd syllables that I have never been told I do and did not know about until this moment. Do not respond on any frequency until I reach extraction. Kyle out, the transmission I made 4 minutes ago, on a frequency this thing should not have. I stand on the path and I listen to myself for a moment. Then, I turn the personal unit off. Not because it changes anything. What's done is done, and what has been learned has been learned. And the jungle keeps its own records in ways that have nothing to do with datapads or Vox logs. But because there is a specific quality to hearing your own voice played back at you from a source you cannot locate. And that quality does not improve with extended exposure. I walk. The jungle is quiet around me. And then, slowly, over the course of perhaps 10 minutes of walking, it is not quiet. One by one, the sounds return. Canopy creatures, ground insects, the wet percussion of moisture dropping from leaf to leaf, the living system resuming its operation, the ambient chorus reasserting itself, the world deciding that whatever required silence has passed, or deciding it no longer needs silence to accomplish what comes next. I walk faster. The extraction point is 9 kilometers northeast. I have 0 laser gun charge, 3 confirmed broken ribs, a flash-blind right eye, 17 recon teams potentially compromised, a portable Vox that I am not transmitting on, and the specific variety of alive that is less a condition and more a temporary administrative oversight, on the part of a death world that has had more time to practice than I have. I walk, and I think about Pirev's list and the Aquilas next to all those names, and I think about the notebook in my breast pocket that I did not read because some things are for family, and I think about the way Ven's bootprint ended mid-stride with nothing after it, as if the jungle simply decided his next step was not necessary, and I think about the 17 teams, and I keep walking. The Imperium sends us to places it has already decided we won't come back from. The trick, Pirev's trick, written in the margin of a primer next to the page about acceptable losses, in handwriting too small for anyone else to read, are without squinting. The trick is deciding the Imperium is wrong. I have been deciding that for 11 deployments. I intend to keep deciding it. Until next deployment, soldier. The Throne watches.